7 worst things Black Noir has done in the comics that the TV series can't show you. Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Terry and this is Marvelous Videos. If you're simply a fan of the Amazon Prime series, then Black Noir is probably one of your favourite comic relief characters from The Boys, alongside the Deep of course. The stoic and literally silent knight of the Seven is a lethal assassin whose martial arts skills are unparalleled, and showrunner Eric Kripke found a way to lean into the tautology of his superhero name being essentially Black by, well, giving him an Afro-American ethnicity. Black Noir is one of the breakout characters of The Boys by far, what with his tree nut allergy and his lethal innocence. But if you've watched our origins video for this character, you'll know things are very different in the comics.
Hi. Would you like an almond joy?
Black Noir is the worst soup in existence, and there's no debate about it. How, you ask? Well, why don't we just tell you instead? Here are 7 worst things Black Noir has done in the comics. Oh, and this is also your spoiler warning because there are going to be a lot. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Now, let's get started.
That's not gonna happen. I'm not gonna let you or anyone else take my future away from me.
Black Noir causes Homelander to go rogue. As we've mentioned already, Black Noir is a very different character in the comics than what you see on the TV show. Go check out our Black Noir Origins video for more on that, but we'll give you a short explanation anyway because it's important for you to understand that, at the end of the day, Homelander's insanity wasn't his own doing.
Stay back! You stay the fuck back or I'll laser you, goddammit! I'll laser every fucking one of you!
In the comics, Black Noir isn't horrifically scarred, he doesn't have a fatal tree nut allergy, and he isn't even black to begin with. He's a clone of the Homelander who was created with all of his powers and none of his autonomy. That's because Black Noir only had one purpose to serve in life, to become Homelander's replacement should he ever lose control and go rogue. But Homelander managed to toe the corporate line and stayed as a valuable asset for Vought for decades, and this essentially nullified Black Noir's life's purpose. Add to that the fact that he was forced to become his Mark's best friend, and you have a rather explosive situation on your hands. Think of it this way, you're telling a shark that instead of eating the chum it ravages on a daily basis, it's supposed to lure it into a false sense of security and only go after it when the chum steps out of line. That shark would lose its absolute mind and do anything to be able to go after the chum because at the end of the day, the shark is the predator and the chum is the prey. And while Homelander is the one going crazy on the TV show, in the comics, that's Black Noir who dressed up as Homelander and committed various unspeakable atrocities in his disguise to frame him for them, and eventually fulfill his own purpose by finally killing and replacing him. That's right folks, Anthony Starr's beautifully maniacal smile is something his character got to display because the creators of the show decided to drop the comic book origins of Black Noir and merge it with Homelander. Otherwise, the only time we see it come out is in The Boys issue 65, where it's revealed that Black Noir was the one committing all of the atrocities that Homelander was supposedly responsible for. Basically think of any of the mindless acts of violence and violation that Homelander has committed in the TV series, and that was Black Noir in the comics. If Homelander wasn't going to go rogue, then Noir was going to make him, whether he liked it or not. Judging by the fact that Homelander eventually lost his marbles himself and staged an event that led to Black Noir finally being able to carry out his mission, we'd have to say a strong no to that one. Black Noir eats children for fun. Yes, you heard us right, and we'll let you work on believing it in your own time. That last entry addressed the fact that most of the atrocious acts that were associated with the Homelander were actually carried out by Black Noir, and this includes him giving babies the Papa Jupiter treatment. Shout out to The Hills Have Eyes. This is first revealed to us via a conversation between James Stillwell and Jess Bradley in issue 40, where we see the images Billy Butcher had sent to the Vought American executive. James Stillwell tells Jess that the Homelander he inherited is the Homelander he has known to be subservient and a good corporate icon for many years. But he admits that his star hero is prone to giving into his violent tendencies, citing an incident from 20 years ago where the rampaging superhero ended up violently slaughtering his targets and eating them afterwards. Towards the conclusion of the series, it's revealed that those images didn't feature Homelander. That was in fact Black Noir in Homelander's uniform. What makes things even more disturbing is that from Noir's psychotic POV, nothing he did felt wrong, because they were all steps taken in service of fulfilling his true purpose. In fact, he savored everything he did to frame Homelander, and trust me, he did a lot of things in that garish costume, because in his head, he was the real hero and not Homie. By the time Black Noir's sanity had fully left him, he came to revel in activities that anyone with a sane mind could only call insane. Those children did nothing to threaten him, but to him they were nothing but sport. This entry itself should be proof enough for our claim that Black Noir is the worst soup in existence, but sadly this is just one of many examples. And to answer your question of what could be worse than this, well... Black Noir sexually assaulted Starlight. If you've never seen anything beyond the first episode of The Boys, you would hate the Deep with a burning passion, and we'd agree with you, though comic book fans wouldn't, and we'll explain why in a minute.
Just a little bit of pole smoking. Whoa, hey, wait. It's just a question of how bad you want to be in the set.
In that episode, newly recruited 7-member Starlight is forced to, quote, do a little pole dancing for her senior team member. This is the first time she has to come to grips with the fact that supes are degenerates who are focused solely on their own satisfaction, but eventually Starlight gathers the courage to stand up to the Deep and gets him kicked out of the 7, thereby setting an example for the viewers as to how such an act should be handled in the first place. Sadly though, comic book Deep would be horrified by the fact that these events took place because 1, the Deep is actually the nicest and most welcoming member of the 7, and 2, he wasn't even involved in that incident in the first place. In the comics, Starlight still goes through this harrowing ordeal, but in a much more oppressive manner, as she had to get through not 1, but 3 supes to earn her place on the 7. These 3 were A-Train, Team Captain Homelander, and his best buddy Black Noir. The trio of depraved supes forced their new recruit to gratify their urges as a form of hazing, and while it's a somewhat accurate depiction of the toxic, jock, boys' locker room type situation, it's disturbing to say the least, made even creepier by the fact that while A-Train and Homelander were at least interacting with Starlight, if you can even call it that, Black Noir just sat there in dead silence, expecting the poor girl to, quote, get on with her job.
Christ's sakes. Clean yourself up. Never let them see you like this.
And to make matters worse, there was no comeuppance to their actions. At least in the show they gave the Deep some comeuppance by kicking him out of the 7. None of that happens in the comics, which makes Starlight's assault that much darker because it mirrors the way in which a corrupt corporation functions. Black Noir's involvement in this incident captures the way that self-serving leaders think of their employees and serves as a stark reminder that more often than not, oppressors get away with their oppressive actions. It's also a grimly realistic portrayal of workplace sexual harassment perpetrated against women, but we're trying not to get too deep into the nitty-gritty of it in this video. We bring up these points just to show you the gravity of Black Noir's actions, and believe me, it keeps getting worse.
Becca.
Becca.
Yes.
Becca Butcher. What about her?
Well, she's missing.
Black Noir inadvertently killed Billy Butcher's wife. One of the biggest differences from comics to show was the fact that the show kept Becca Butcher alive and gave her a story that is somehow both worse and better off than her fate in the comics. As we've already mentioned, Black Noir was the one responsible for all of the psychotic things Homelander was being accused of in the comics, which eventually drove him crazy enough to stage a coup, something that might also end up happening in the TV series. This also includes Billy Butcher's primary motivation to kill Homelander and his overall hatred for supes. That's right folks, in the comics it wasn't Homelander who took Becca against her will, it was Black Noir. We'd have honestly been glad if that was the end of it, but somehow things managed to get darker once we take a deeper look into what unfolded after he assaulted her. If you have watched this series, then you'll know that in Season 1, Episode 7, Dr. Vogelbaum tells Homelander what happened to Becca Butcher after he assaulted her.
Rebecca Butcher had come to her with a completely unprecedented medical condition.
In Vogelbaum's story, Becca Butcher turned up at Vought looking for assistance after she realized she was pregnant with Homelander's child. They tried to help her out, but she died in labor because of the unnatural circumstances of the child's birth. In Vogelbaum's story, Homelander's alleged child tore its way out of its mother before dying itself, drowning in a pool of her blood. Of course, the very next episode revealed that that was all a lie, and that both Becca and her child had managed to survive. But do you really think that story was something the show's writers came up with entirely on their own? If you said yes, then sorry to disappoint you, but something similar happens to poor Mrs. Butcher in the source material that inspired the TV show, and it's even worse than Dr. Vogelbaum's story, so this is your trigger warning. In the comics, after Black Noir violates Mrs. Butcher, she ends up carrying his child, but neither the mother nor the baby within her would live to see a long life, unlike their TV counterparts.
And the baby?
Lived all of 10 seconds. Drowned in its mother's blood.
Dr. Vogelbaum's story in the show is a direct retelling of what actually happened in the comics, with one crucial twist at the end that somehow makes this already terrifying story even more horrific. Becca Butcher was in bed with her husband Billy when her child delivered himself thanks to his heat vision. And if that wasn't enough trauma for Billy, the soup then targeted him. Butcher was forced to end its life under threat to his own, and we're just going to let that sink in now. None of these tragic, sanity-shattering events would have taken place if Black Noir hadn't gotten it in his head to go after Billy's wife. But knowing the sick SOB, he probably enjoyed every second of it and would have been proud of his child's accomplishments.
You don't fucking understand! Oh, this is perfect, isn't it? You're gonna use this to get rid of me, aren't you?
Black Noir kills Homelander, and speaking of things this sicko enjoyed doing, Black Noir is able to carry out his mission finally in issue 65 of The Boys, which is also the event of his first and only unmasking. We've made it pretty clear that Noir is one of the most psychotic characters we've ever come across just by talking about his actions so far. But if you want a true taste of the full extent of his lunacy, stop watching this video and go read this issue. Yes, it's that messed up. The issue opens up with Billy Butcher finally confronting a blood-drenched Homelander in the Oval Office. The latter has just introduced the President's head to Homelander Jr. and is ready for Butcher to try something, anything, to piss him off. Butcher brings up his wife, and Homelander laughs it off, saying he simply doesn't remember killing her. He explains that his mind doesn't work like the rest, that there are things he remembers doing and things he doesn't recall doing at all. But since there was evidence that Homelander had committed such acts, he simply chalks it up to dissociative identity disorder, and proceeds to take control over his own life by taking out the American government. As Butcher squares up to him, Black Noir shows up and starts laughing in a very creepy manner. Outside, Huey gets a call from Mother's Milk, who explains to him that he'd finally figured out the mystery behind Black Noir's identity. The guy was a clone of Homelander. Mother's Milk also goes so far as to postulate, accurately we might add, that Black Noir had framed Homelander at every step of the way, turning him into a psychopath by mistake, as Butcher puts it, all so he could finally carry out the one order around which his entire life revolved. With that eerie smile stuck on his maniacal face, Noir admits that he committed every crime Homelander has been framed for, and that he loved doing all those, quote, lovely things. This causes Homelander to have the mother of all meltdowns as he pieces everything together and realizes he's been played at every turn by the very guy he thought was his best friend, and a mute besides. Homelander fires up his heat vision and lunges at Noir, screaming at him that he had ruined his entire effing life. But as it turns out, Noir was the stronger of the two, because he nearly knocked Homelander out cold with a punch to the jaw, and then incinerated most of his body with his heat vision. This is not to say that Homie didn't put up a fight. When Noir stumbled onto the front lawn of the White House after their battle, he was disemboweled and missing a massive chunk of right eye and skull. But all that was left of Homelander was his right arm, and if that isn't enough to put the fear of God in you, we don't know what is. In a way, when Butcher finally puts Noir down for good, he's also avenging Homelander, and that's a twistedly comforting notion, especially after everything Black Noir put him through. Sadly, Homelander, Billy Butcher and Starlight aren't the only people to have been degraded, violated and preyed upon by this sadistic psycho. Black Noir sexually assaulted Huey. Yep, that happened, and we're glad for once the boys left things to our imagination. We'd like to think that Black Noir simply gave Huey a thumbs up, beat him silly and left. Helps us cope better that way, but it doesn't change the fact that during the events of the Herogasm miniseries, which serves as the primary inspiration for episode 6 of season 3 of The Boys, this masked maniac went after one of Butcher's boys directly. quick note on Herogasm. It's exactly what it sounds like, except it's 1,000 times worse, and the kind of drugs that give Soups the thrills are what would cause us normies to completely freak out due to the sheer taboo nature of some of these things. It's basically a sexually charged annual retreat for every Soup employed by Vought American, which also made it the perfect place for Butcher and his boys to gather intel from. And it was their lucky week too, because who else should turn up to attend the party than the Vice President of the United States of America himself, bought and paid for by Vought, of course. So, the boys dig in for a weekend filled with scoops that'll put them ahead of the Soups in this mess of a deathmatch that Butcher had set up with Homelander subconsciously. What they weren't aware of was the fact that Black Noir had discovered their hideout, thanks to Huey and Starlight indulging in a bit of phone sex. This breach in security and lapse in oversight would lead to Huey going through his darkest hour yet. In the TV show, it looks like Huey's Achilles heel is going to be the V-24. The young man is consumed by the same hatred that Butcher has buried deep inside of himself, and the V-24 is basically like heroin for him. He can't get enough of it, and it'll surely come back to bite him in the ass, and hard. But in the comics, things somehow manage to get even darker than that. When the boys deploy to their positions for their Capture the Captive mission, Huey is in the sewers, unaware of the fact that he wasn't there alone. No sooner had Butcher finished a comms check that Black Noir grabbed Huey from behind and tied him up. What happened next is something we don't want to describe in detail. Let's just say Noir's thumb and Huey got to know each other a bit too well, and the wee lad didn't want that to happen, to say the least. This was as shocking as it was confusing, because there was literally no rhyme or reason behind what Noir did to Huey, unless he did it because he got off on it, which is something Mother's Milk brings up in issue 65 as well. The only reason Black Noir assaulted Huey was to establish his dominance over the little man. Even calling him good soldier as he did it could have been a psychological ploy to break Huey's spirit. If it was, it definitely succeeded, because it took him a long time to admit what had happened to him to his teammates, and a longer time still to accept it. I suppose we should be thankful that nothing like this is ever going to happen in the TV series, because Noir is a fundamentally different character there. Because if it did, then that would probably be the most shocking moment in the series' history, and that includes the time Homelander went out with a Nazi.
Black Noir. We haven't properly met yet. I'm Starlight.
Black Noir tries to get Starlight to wear her new outfit. The one thing that the TV series does manage to nail is just how obnoxious and controlling the life of a superhero employed by Vought can be. Homelander is the perfect example of this, as his every action is dictated by his popularity ratings.
I said that we should go to the police.
You disobeyed my orders because you're with him.
When he does something that declines the ratings, like dating Stormfront for example, Vought have to roll out an entire movie to cover it up. But this goes much deeper in the comics, and nowhere is it more disillusioning than when Starlight is given her new costume and origin story. In issue 32, Starlight is meeting with a couple of Vought officials who have handed her a skimpy one-piece that barely covers anything, and they tell her that that is her new uniform. Why? Because Victory Comics, the publishing company that creates comics based on Vaught's Soups, had recently changed her origin story and made her take a darker path. How? Well, they had her character sexually assaulted, and decided that the way she chose to cope with it was by becoming more sexual. Starlight rightfully loses her mind at this, and makes the officials leave her dressing room post-haste. When one of them brings up breast implants, she looks ready to fry him up right there. Issue 33 opens with Vought officials broaching the topic with team leader Homelander, who says he couldn't be bothered with something like this and tells them off for disturbing him, the goddamn superhero, with a concern as trivial as a bikini and a boob job. So they turn to A-Train instead, completely disregarding the fact that it was the speedster who nearly violated Starlight in real life. Starlight and A-Train's argument caused a scene in the lounge area naturally, but everything fell deathly silent when Black Noir showed up. And what's more, he had Starlight's new suit in hand and was making weird, creepy laughing noises. Starlight got visibly uncomfortable with the fact that Black Noir, the one member of the Seven who had a malicious reputation and lived up to it, was the one who was forcing this dress onto her. More than that, she was plain scared of Noir because of his ruthless yet enigmatic nature. No one knew who he was, where he came from, what he was all about, and that practically made him the devil as far as Starlight was concerned at that moment. If you read this issue and go through these panels specifically, you get a sense that had Queen Maeve not stepped in and saved Starlight from Noir, things might have unfolded in a rather unsavory manner. That feeling will be reinforced twice over if you've seen the TV show, because there, Starlight only has to deal with Madeline Stillwell over the skimpy suit. And also, while TV's Black Noir seems like a genuine sweetheart underneath all the assassin work that he's forced to carry out for Vought, comic Black Noir has no sense of compassion, emotion, or righteousness. He is truly a vile creation, and this moment was the first true glimpse of that fact.
Sadly, we are the only survivors. I failed you. All of you.
Marvelous verdict. We tried to steer clear of comparing instances from the comics to the TV show, but we realized rather quickly that we couldn't do that because context is everything. If you only have the TV show as a frame of reference, then Black Noir is probably your favorite character, and we really understand where you're coming from. We really do. But if you go through the source material, every gesture that we've seen from him that indicates he has a heart underneath his cold exterior could just be fake. Or worse, it could be self-centered. And why would that be worse? Well, we just gave you 7 reasons for it, and that doesn't even cover everything. Black Noir is simply the worst soup in existence. He has a laundry list of committing abominable acts that would get him convicted for every crime in the book, and then some. If divine justice was a concept, no one would be more worthy of getting severely punished by it than Black Noir. We always knew this about him, and now you know it too. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.